Hey friends, welcome to the Rhythms for Life podcast, where each week we talk about rhythms for building resilience so you can take charge of your mental, spiritual, and relational health.
These ideas come from Rebekah's best-selling book, Building a Resilient Life, How Adversity Awakens Strength, Hope, and Meaning. So grab your copy, invite your friends, and let's build resilience together.
Welcome back. I'm Rebekah.
And I'm Gabe.
It's May.
I know, it's Uno de Mayo. May 1st.
And in 4 more days, it'll be Cinco de Mayo.
I know, but May's
my favorite month.
Well, that's for good reason.
Yes.
And I always get the privilege of celebrating 2 things with you in May, and sometimes it's on the same day.
I know.
Which is the case this year.
Yes, it is.
Your birthday, May 12th, Mother's Day, and your 50th birthday. Can I say it? Or we don't want to give that away?
You just did. Yes, half a century.
Hey, you do not look like you're 50 years old.
Well,
As your husband, I just want to say.
Thanks, babe.
You look so much younger than that.
You know, I still ordered off the kids' meal when I was like 17. People were like, you look so young. I'm like, that's going to come in handy,
maybe. It's proportionally, keeping up with you. But it's also Mental Health Month. And, you know, everybody's thinking, and you'll see a lot more emphasis on it this month, which is a good thing because for so long, people never talked about mental health. Now I feel like everybody talks about it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's good.
Well, partly because everyone's navigating it. It's now top of mind.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but fortunately, because I think what we're going after with the Rhythms for Life podcast is normalizing prevention care. And so much of like the culture is like responding to the fire.
Right.
But what we're trying to do over here is not just respond to the fire, but get ahead of it and actually make sure your fire extinguishers and everything's ready to go. Because if you maintain a healthy rhythmic life, then when stressful situations come, you're less rattled. You kind of know what your brain needs with movement. And that's why we're focusing specifically in May on movement, because movement singularly, when we look at historical healing of trauma, it's always in community and regulating rhythms of movement. Those are the top 2 ways. So you can't be isolated or that leads to depression. You can't be sedentary because that leads to anxiety. Because an underactive body creates an overactive brain, which is what anxiety really becomes. You kind of loop with these thoughts.
I think this is so helpful. It's practical. All of us can remember that. And trying to every day incorporate movement. And that can be as simple as walking, which we could debate if that's actually exercise. I don't think it is.
No, you were just saying, you were telling me how this crazy athlete was like mocking walking.
It's like, it's what humans have done since we were ever
And that's true.
made.
That's true until the automobile or maybe the horse. I don't know.
Yeah, or the phone.
Right? And the problem is the reason.
Amazon.
Yes.
And food delivery.
Yeah, everything comes right to your door. But the point is, walking shouldn't be a novelty. But unfortunately, our culture has become so sedentary because everything is right at our fingertips and available. But in agrarian farming, right, up until the 1920s, the Industrial Revolution, everything before that in humanity was very physically exerting, outdoors, labor-intensive physically. And now, because we've lost so much of that as a society, we now have to be so proactive.
Right. Yeah.
And just doing what used to be considered normal.
Okay, so we have a movement calendar, essentially a challenge for May to try to inspire each of you to take seriously, are you moving every day?
Yes. And having fun with it. Like some people love pickleball. Some people just, go golfing like you and me, or just what are you doing that's outside? May is a great month to get outside. For a lot of places, even in the north, it's starting to warm up. Like the sun is shining, flowers are coming out of the ground, the birds are making nests. All the good things that we need for our soul is drawing us outside. So
you can go to RebekahLyons.com/movement. You can see a full 30-day calendar and a way to track that and to keep up with how you're going to move.
Yes. And so many of you did this with us back in January when we had 30 rhythms to kick off the new year, living in rhythm. And so we have a whole community on Facebook where you're going to hear from me almost every day that month with ideas, and you can upload photos or things that you did. We want to learn as a community and feel less alone in doing this.
Yeah. So come over there, join that community, and be a part of an entire community that's not just talking about mental health, but you're physically doing things to help your mental health continue to be strong. Now, today we continue in the book club conversation. We're talking about being free, that you're free to be weak and you're free to celebrate.
Yeah.
And this conversation is one that I think for a lot of people, it's a little difficult to feel freedom to be weak. We feel like we're supposed to be strong.
Right. And we talk a lot about that. You share areas in where you've felt weak and vulnerable, and God has kind of rushed in through community and people. The same for me. And I think part of our vulnerability is our superpower, yet we often want to hide the places we're weak.
Right.
And Paul gets loud about this in the New Testament, where he says, I don't boast in my strength, I boast in my weakness, because that's where his strength is made perfect in me. And so I have always written in a way that's pretty raw and vulnerable. And I have found that initially, that seemed a little scary, but then you find the solidarity with people that are all feeling weak. We just don't feel permission to say it out loud. And sometimes in the confession, there's freedom that follows, which is the whole point.
Yeah. And Free to Celebrate is all about us taking the time to actually celebrate those in our life, moments, not just moving on. And Rebekah, your birthday this month, coming up while this episode's out, we're going to celebrate. I can't tell you everything we're doing, but
good.
It's going to be great.
I like it.
Because 50 is a big deal. And you've been very faithful, especially as I look at like the last 12 years of your life where you started to take up this mantle of using your gifts, not just for yourself, but to actually help others talk about and work through these deeper areas of concern in their heart. They're dealing with mental health, panic attacks, anxiety, topics that were not really well talked about, and you just courageously have been talking about it now for over a decade. And it's fun at this point to see the fruit of that and to see even this community that's part of these conversations with us, a whole community of people growing together so that we can be people that help other people gain freedom.
Thanks, babe. Well, it couldn't happen without, the two of us living into this. We talk a lot of offline about just how do we have these two shared calls under the same roof, these two callings of, culture and mental health. And I love partnering with you on the things God has put in the forefront of your heart. And you do the same with me here over in the Rhythms community for mental health and for family and marriage and parenting, all the things. It's truly a joy. And, I think it is a celebration. People used to not talk about their age, and maybe they still don't, but because I chronically overshare, here we are. But I felt more nervous turning 25, like, oh my goodness, I'm a quarter of a century, than I do at 50. And I think it's partly because every decade gets to become what you decide you want to make of it. And there's something really sweet about being older, but yet still feeling a little more youthful in like the friendship that we have with our kids that are in college now, and just playing, like finding permission to play together. And then Kate and Joy keep us young because they're so silly. And there's always something to be laughing about with them, but then doing the purposeful work. I mean, it's just beautiful for God to just call us into the things that He knows will make us flourish. And so aging is part of that whole journey.
That's right. So listen, for Rebekah's birthday, she doesn't know I'm doing this. I want any of you who are listening to this or following this to maybe reach out to Rebekah. Send her an email to info@RebekahLyons.com. Let her know how her story, her freedom, her writing, her gifts have been used somehow in your life as a part of your journey. I would love, Rebekah, for you to hear that, because I think so often we, in our own skin, don't recognize the way God's using us. And I think this community would love to tell you that. So jump in with us to do that. And now let's listen to this current episode on Free to Be Weak and Free to Celebrate. Well, this week we are talking about chapter 11, Free to Be Weak, and chapter 12, Free to Celebrate.
I know, which feels weird to talk both topics in the same episode, but it's going to tie in.
Well, that's what I love about your book. It walks through so many different areas that we are living out in our lives, but we don't always have freedom in. So this is life. Like there's moments where we're weak and there's moments when we celebrate.
All in the same day.
Same day. So I love this quote by J.I. Packer. He says, "The weaker we feel, the harder we lean. The harder we lean, the stronger we grow spiritually, even while our bodies waste away."
Yeah.
I know for me, I feel weakest when I'm going through a health crisis or something's happening where it's out of control. And yet those are the moments I feel so much closer to God. Like there's no doubt He uses these moments where we're in our weakness or where we recognize like we can't do it on our own to draw us close to Him.
Honestly, I feel like we're strongest when you are most vulnerable to me, and I think a lot of men kind of have their guard up, or they have that wall and they don't really show their cards because they think vulnerability will show weakness. But what women think is like, this is actually kind of great. It's very attractive to me that you have trusted me with your heart, if that makes sense. So weakness in so many ways is counter to the way God sees it, right? We think showing our weakness or our vulnerability is a deficit, but God's going, no, and my strength is made perfect in your weakness. And I can redeem some things and heal some relationships. In maybe some of your most vulnerable moments or seasons, you actually get to experience the fullness of intimacy with your spouse or with me as your Savior. God invites us into that through weakness. I love that. That's a good thing.
I do think as guys, we just don't want you or our kids, we don't want anybody to think we're weak. Like there's something about the way I think we're also made. It's that warrior side. It's that side that's like there to protect and that is designed to be someone that's going to be strong in the face of adversity. And yet, like you said, God's also wants us to recognize our weaknesses and that anything we have as a strength isn't really there for our own, to beat our chest and for us to advance ourselves. It's actually there for others.
Yeah, that idea of a tender warrior, right? You see kind of that two things coming together. Even David, right? He was a warrior, a king, but he also played the harp and danced before the Lord. And you're kind of like, naked. Wow, what a Renaissance man he was. And you're just like, oh yeah, I guess maybe that is the fullness of withholding nothing from God, is that you get to be vulnerable and you get to also be brave and strong and honest. And I talk about Moses in this chapter because God calls him to be one who would deliver his people. I mean, that's a big warrior mantle that he's putting on Moses, that he's going to go in and get all of his people from Egypt. And Moses just immediately responds like, wait, in case you didn't know, I'm not good with words. And he's just using all these excuses as to why God picked the wrong guy. And what's so, as you know, if you read this passage, God in the end goes, who made your mouth? As if God didn't know that he was struggled with words when he made him. And what I come to in this chapter is that I choose you because you're weak. I choose you because you can't do this call of a warrior or a father or a mission on whatever without me. Like, you're going to need me. You're going to depend on me so that my strength will go before you, and I'll give you signs and wonders that you're going to perform in front of Pharaoh. So don't worry about your voice. Like, I'll give you Aaron, he'll interpret, but I still choose you. You are the one I choose because you're weak so that my strength is made perfect. If we think of it that way, then we're a little less intimidated by our frailty.
And when we acknowledge our weaknesses, it does allow other people to enter our life that God ordained to be in our life, to be partnered with us, to help us, because we can't do all these things on our own. And I love that about Moses and Aaron, that Aaron did become the mouthpiece. I mean, Moses probably he didn't get over that problem with his ability to speak in a way that he felt confident. So God made up for it in a different way, but it didn't disqualify him, these lack of skills. It's kind of like what we talked about in the chapter about free to be rescued, like that experience I had where I acknowledged my weakness, and in the weakness I was rescued. I had friends that came along and said, no, we're going to help you do this now that you've acknowledged your weakness. Yeah. And so there's this beauty that comes when we can say it out loud, when we can say, I don't have enough. I'm at the end of myself. It kind of goes into that surrender idea, like we see so much that this story in human beings' lives play out. The moment they surrender is when everything comes through.
Yeah, God swoops in through himself, through his people. And honestly, that's how we're supposed to live, these interdependent lives, not codependent, but interdependent. Like, I contribute to you in areas that you need support. You contribute to me in areas that I feel weak and I need support. That's the point, right? We're lifting each other's arms. I think about like how many moms I've reached out to and go, I don't know how to do this. There's no playbook for how to do this. I don't know how to launch kids well and still want to like be in their lives every day. Every season that I'm in that's new, I'm looking at a mom or a girlfriend a few steps ahead of me and going, will you help me? I don't know what I'm doing here. And I'm really okay and comfortable with not knowing. And that's weak, right? Like, that might be seen as a negative or a deficit because I don't already know, but why are we supposed to know? Like, that's the whole point. Yeah. Like, you learn through experience so that you can take it from someone else, take counsel and mentorship from someone else, and then give it to someone else.
And I think we connect. It's clear we do connect with other people when we share our weakness. Like, people don't connect with someone because of their strengths. It's usually through vulnerability, which I think has been true for you in your ministry, that people in the words that you write and the stories that you tell when you speak, the common comment I know I always hear is how much people are like, I can't believe she shares all this so vulnerably, versus presenting yourself as like you've got it all together.
Yeah.
And that creates a natural, I think, connection, and people know they can trust you because you're not trying to just put the polish on everything and act like we've got it figured out. And there's a real gift in that. I want to talk about chapter 12, because free to celebrate. I mean, this is one of those where it's so fun. Wendell Berry says this: expect the end of the world, laugh. Laughter is immeasurable. Be joyful, though you have considered all the facts. It also reminds me of C.S. Lewis when he talks about, at the time he was writing about this, and he was talking about if there was an atomic bomb, or there was, in the middle of the war, like a bomb were to drop in England. And he basically writes this whole quote about, hey, may they find us playing games together and eating great food and having a great night, because our lives, especially those who know the story and are connected into God's story through Jesus, we actually can have peace and celebrate no matter what we're walking through.
Mm-hmm. Which is, important to remember today in our year now. It's like in every new year, there's always some form of pending doom. But what do we do? How do we respond? How do we live in a countercultural way that's not head buried in the sand and isn't unaware of what's going on that's hard? But what is our response in a posture of salvation, of eternity, in light of eternity? I love 2 Corinthians 4, where it talks, so fix your eyes on what is unseen, because what is unseen is eternal, whereas what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. And so we've always kind of lift our gaze from maybe the minutia of what is hard. I go, God, there's an eternal story that I'm invited into, and that's going to help me celebrate where I am right now.
Yeah. And sometimes celebration comes after a lot of hard work. I mean, too, there's moments that we need to take to appreciate something that we did partner with God on, or we worked with other people on, and we experienced the goal that we had set, and we take time to celebrate. And I remember John Maxwell, who I used to work with, would always talk about, after a great win, you get 24 hours to celebrate, but then we move on. You don't stay in the celebration forever. I know you might argue with that.
No,
but he also would say,
make sure they're worth it, those 24 hours.
And then in the failures, we need to move forward. So 24 hours to be sad about what happened, to grieve it, but keep moving forward.
Yeah.
And Joy, our daughter, reminds me of this one so much, because she wants to celebrate every day.
She wants every day's her birthday, even if it's somebody else's birthday. She's like, but when my birthday comes,
my birthday, she wants us to sing happy birthday to her. Which, as the dad, I will do that now. Everybody else in the family gets mad at me because I'm catering to this. I'm spoiling her rotten, but I don't care, because she's so happy.
No, it's my birthday.
To hear the birthday song, and she knows it's not her birthday, but she enjoys it.
We're like, it's still Kate's birthday. No, Mommy. No, it is Kate's birthday. This is part of just learning that the world doesn't revolve just around you, but she is Joy, and she kind of shakes it off. Taylor Swift song. Joy's really good about shaking something off pretty fast. Something that maybe she kind of bumped her knee, or she was sad about something. And we're working with her on this, because we're trying to go, like, we make sure that she knows we're trying to nurture her heart. But she'll be like, it's okay, Mommy. It's okay. All better. And part of that's her survival skill, let's be honest. But part of it is something that we can all learn from, that, like, we get to decide how we're going to respond to something ultimately, and how long we're going to ruminate on something, or we're going to decide to give thanks. Scripture's so clear: in everything give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus. Well, I don't want to always give thanks for things that are terrible. I really don't. I know there's going to be a good story on the other side of this, but right now, what does celebration look like in grief, right? We just talked about free to grieve last time, and it's like, can I celebrate God's, like, eternal glory in the lives, or the ones we've lost right here? How do I hold a kingdom view in light of what is temporary? Yeah.
And if you're having a struggle with celebrating, or you're not sure what to celebrate, what Rebekah's saying is true. Take time to make a list of what are we grateful for. I know every time we go out to a restaurant, the server shows up and says, "Are we celebrating anything tonight?" And Rebekah and I quickly look at each other, and we almost always think of something that we are celebrating. It's one of our children just went off to college. We're celebrating that, or we just had an anniversary.
We just hit a deadline, or we're out without kids.
Of course, we're celebrating. It's date night. I mean, it's that simple to start to develop a mindset that says we are going to be a celebratory type of people. We're going to be people that praise God in the midst of tragic circumstances. But celebration, just like Sabbath, takes intentionality. Sometimes it's easy to just gloss over the moments we should celebrate. I know that can be a tendency for me. I'm moving on to the next thing, and I have to work hard to go, no, take time to stop and to give thanks and to celebrate what just took place, because that was a miracle. That was amazing.
We were talking about this morning with a couple girlfriends, that we need to demystify miracles, because miracles are everywhere. We just don't tend to take the time to recognize them. I mean, just the miracle of life. If a baby's born, that's a miracle. Getting pregnant is a miracle. Overcoming something hard is a miracle. Healing in your body is a miracle. Having a sound mind and being one who carries peace after a season of anxiety, that's a miracle. And so giving praise and celebration on the regular, even for young kids, just like look around, new life, spring, that's God's view of a miracle. Yeah. Then all of a sudden it's a little easier to just stay in that posture of celebration, because you see it all as a good gift. As a gift from the Father who loves us.
Yeah, and sometimes I think we feel indulgent to celebrate, to take time, whether it's a birthday party or, it's like, every birthday doesn't need a party, right? I mean, I grew up, I did not get celebrated much on birthdays. Yeah. I remember the one party I had 2 friends over in 6th grade, and I still remember the one friend who said, "I bought a present for you, and the second part of it's not here yet, but it's coming, and I'll bring it to you soon." And
you never got it.
Never got it, I was so disappointed because there was a lot of pressure on these 2 friends. I mean, they had a lot of pressure to show up.
But had he given you a gift, you'd still remember that too.
But we don't always grow up in environments where we are celebrated, but it's something where you can make it an intention, like in our home, with our family. Let's just celebrate the small things. And that can be as simple as let's go get an ice cream cone and let's just tonight give thanks for something. Yeah. And we can create those kind of moments. And when we do, it starts to create freedom. It creates freedom for everybody in your care, so that they can feel the freedom to celebrate those that are around them that maybe often aren't getting celebrated.
Yeah, this is the emotion of gladness, right? This joy in all things. And it really is a decision. It's a choice. You get to decide, are we going to complain about the circumstances of the day, the highs or the lows? Do we focus on the highs or the lows? We don't ignore the lows, but how do we respond even to the lows? With gratitude and praise, and shift that narrative constantly, even how we model that in front of our kids, how we model like complaining or not, or praising, how we model gossip or honoring, right? Like, what do we do? Because we can try to get our kids to kind of conform to a culture, but we create the culture as adults. And how do we choose to celebrate?
So to pull this all together, I want to challenge you to celebrate your weakness. Think about your weakness and find a way to celebrate that you have a weakness, that through that God's strength is going to be made manifest. Thank you guys for continuing this journey with us and the conversations around being free. It's not an easy subject to work through, but I think hopefully each of these topics and each of these episodes are just giving you a little more of a picture of how you can experience that kind of freedom in your own life.
Well, I hope that was encouraging for you. Don't forget to join us May 1 at RebekahLyons.com/movement for Mental Health Month. And then also the Mother's Day gift guide is out now. So if you are wanting to forward this to your favorite people, give them some clues of some things you'd love. These are some of my favorites that I think you would enjoy.
I know it helped me. It helped me to see your favorite things and to know what you want for Mother's Day. Yeah, and so if there's any guys listening.
Gabe, I was doing it for the people, but that includes you apparently.
This is a great list for you to go. It's perfectly curated.
Yeah, so RebekahLyons.com/Mother's Day.